internationally, some of the judgments that when you were in the Supreme Court that came up was the decriminalization of homosexuality, and several cases, when it came have come up. But this especially, Americans were watching what happened, the rights of LGBTQI, them. And as I said, on the termination of pregnancy, these are things which internationally they were looking at Indian courts. Did you realize at that time when these decisions were taking that it's going to have ramifications beyond the borders, geographical borders of the country? People abroad are also watching it.
Well, I learned, of course, from my readings that, there was a great deal of interest in these issues. But there again, the issue of queer rights, the LGBTQ plus population, their rights, and medical termination of pregnancy are two different issues. On decriminalizing homosexuality, as you know, we took a call that the provisions of Section 377 of the Penal Code, which made it an offense to engage in carnal intercourse against the order of nature. That was a word, that's a phrase which was used. That was unconstitutional because, as between adults engaging in consensual relationships of the same gender, having decriminalized homosexuality, which was again a judgment which was widely reported across the globe. Our judgment was followed in different jurisdictions across the world, at least cited in different jurisdictions. Whether it was followed or not was ultimately a different issue. The next step that the movement sought to pursue in the Supreme Court was the right to marriage equality. They said, well, people of engaging in same-sex relationships should have a legal right to marry within the purview of the Special Marriage Act. And there we said that, well, whether the right to marry should be recognized or not is a function of Parliament, because the Special Marriage Act used the expression man and woman. And we said that we can't substitute the word man and woman for man and man or woman and woman.
So that has to be done in the legislature.
That has to be done by legislation. I was partially in a minority because in my minority judgment, Justice Sanjay Kaul and I, we said that, well, even if we don't recognize the right to marry, we must recognize the right to form civil unions, which the majority felt that you can't do by a dictate or diktat of the Supreme Court. But then that again begs
What's
the question.
Difference?
A civil union. Marriage is a union which is recognized by the law as marriage postulates, a relationship which either follows under the Special Marriage Act, by virtue of which, it's a relationship which parties enter into by a legal form. Or by your personal laws. Like
so in civil union, there's no rights?
No. In a civil union, there may be certain rights, but not all the rights which follow upon
So
marriage.
Inheritance doesn't come?
In a civil union, possibly no. Unless, again, the law, that's exactly the point which we made in our judgment, that, marriage is not just a matter of entering upon a relationship which is within the fold of law. That has consequences in other areas like inheritance, succession, adoption, so on and so forth. And therefore, it was much too complex for the court to legislate upon. It was essentially a function of Parliament. But we felt that at least let's recognize the right of two adults of the same gender or the same sex who want to enter upon a union to cohabit together. Because that itself will give social recognition of the right to cohabit and to form unions. And then perhaps at a later point of time, Parliament can intervene. On the other area that you referred to, namely the medical termination of pregnancy, our law is much ahead of the laws in other parts of the world. For instance, our law recognizes the right of every woman to terminate a pregnancy up to 20 weeks, and then between 20 and 24 weeks on the advice of two medical practitioners. And by interpretation, we have gone much further.
Yes.
For instance, an unmarried woman had the right to terminate up to 20 weeks. We said in our judgment, which I delivered, that there is no difference between the right of an unmarried woman and a married woman between 20 and 24 weeks. And you can terminate even up to 24 weeks if you are if a person is an unmarried woman. Significantly, our law permits termination of pregnancies even beyond 24 weeks in the event that the child has certain congenital abnormalities. So in that sense, we have gone far beyond, say, the position in the United States, where the US Supreme Court reversed its judgment in Roe versus
Roe
Wade.
Wade, huh.
So in that sense, our law is far ahead of the curve.
Click here to watch the full episode.